After a successful morning chasing the Blue Ridge Southern around in snow flurries, the afternoon saw plenty of sun. As we were driving east from Asheville on Interstate 40, we heard P87 talking to the dispatcher over the radio, ready to head west from the Bridgewater chip plant. Still several miles out, we settled for Marion, 10 miles west of the plant at milepost 99.8. The automatic permissive block signal here is yellow for eastbounds, meaning P87 hasn't yet entered the closest block. We ended up waiting what felt like forever. After about 12 minutes, the signal dropped and soon P87 could be seen in the distance. Marion is the crossroads of the Southern and Clinchfield Railroads, now NS and CSX, east of town at a location aptly named Clinch Cross, since the S line passes overhead. On the west end of town, the 1867 depot still stands, restored and renovated in 2005, framed nicely by the Southern-era signals. Years ago, P87 frequently used former Southern High-Hood GP38-2s, but unfortunately modern power has taken its place. While they seem overpowered with a -9 and SD60E, it will certainly make it much easier to climb the steep grades in the loops. As previously mentioned in the Blue Ridge Southern video, the wood chips are bound for the Evergreen Packaging Mill in Canton. They'll undergo the craft pulping process for production of paperboard and further bleached where brightness is needed, generally for white printing paper or cartons. Most of the wood chips from today's 13 loads will end up as paperboard in food and beverage packaging. Further west at Old Fort, Mill Creek flows downhill into the Carolina Piedmont, while upstream marks the start of the 12-mile climb up the Blue Ridges to Swannanoa Gap about 1,100 feet above our current elevation. We arrive well ahead since the signal is still yellow, setting up for a scene of the train splitting the signals complete with a Southern-style whistleboard in the foreground. Unlike most bi-directional signal territory I've ever railfanned in, the S-line is a new one for me. Instead of dispatcher-controlled interlockings where signal indication authorizes train movement, resulting in the tumble down of opposing automatic block signals to red, the signals here simply indicate the condition of the block ahead, only turning red once it's occupied. The signal on the left, however, is an absolute signal indicated by the additional red marker lamp below. Though not dispatcher-controlled, a red at one of these signals indicates a positive stop, meaning trains cannot proceed, whereas a red at a signal with a number plate simply means the train must stop before proceeding at restricted speed. Had we known they were going to take over a half hour to move 12 miles, we might have had time to take a closer look at the 1880 depot and the bright red Southern caboose on display. Nevertheless, they make a good backdrop as P87 approaches the grade. We barely make our hike to the top of the high fill as the train enters the first loop. The locomotives are working harder now, digging into the 2.2% average grade when factoring in the compensated drag for curvature. They'll travel another 1.25 miles around the loop to our location on the high fill, spanning a gap of only 205 feet between the railheads below. 5 minutes later, they emerge from the cut and into the second loop, having ascended another 115 feet in elevation. With such low volumes of traffic, it could take even the most avid railfan years to capture the marvel of the loops. Nevertheless, it was still impressive to witness a train turn back against itself. Despite all the twists and turns, chasing the train to another portion of the loops is challenging, since Mill Creek Road becomes unpaved as it winds over the mountain. We make it ahead of the train at Ridgecrest, where they'll soon pop out of the 1,832-foot Swannanoa Tunnel and rise over the summit. Hopefully these illustrations help clarify the difficulties engineers of the Western North Carolina Railroad faced in the mid to late 1800s when tasked with finding a route west of Old Fort. While following the Swannanoa Creek provided a straight route, surveyors noted a rise in excess of 7% approaching the gap, so a route was chosen to the north following Mill Creek. In order to maintain a desirable grade not exceeding 2%, the railroad loops around in the valleys between each ridge until turning southwest toward Long Creek. Though the loops average about 1.8%, the tight curves, sometimes exceeding 10 degrees, adds another 0.4% in drag. The steepest portions are near the summit, where several tunnels were blasted before returning back along Swannanoa Creek. Old Fort to the summit is a little more than 5 miles as the crow flies, while trains traverse a distance more than double that length at slow speeds. P87 reaches the top 40 minutes after we saw them at the base, for an average speed of 18 miles per hour. The Chipgons are ex-Southern and NS, though the names and logos have been patched out. Reporting marks DJJX indicates these are owned by David J. Joseph Transportation, dealing primarily with scrap metal brokerage. My best guess is they lease these cars back to NS or other railroads on an as-needed basis. P87 will descend over 530 feet, passing over some rolling hills in the communities of Black Mountain, Swannanoa, and Wilson before reaching Asheville Yard 16 miles to the west. Since it will be a few hours before they return with empties, we turn back onto I-40 to head east for the night, concluding our winter trip to North Carolina. I hope you stick around for the other videos from this visit, and as always, thanks for watching.